Lead the Team Nation. Welcome back for another fantastic, fun, and engaging episode with Dan Key, who is COO of Solenis. And he leads procurement, operations, and supply chain over at that specific organization. And he's also served as a senior leader who's improved key metrics and end-to-end supply chains at companies that you've probably heard of: Honeywell, which is also one of my alma maters, Sigma-Aldrich, Axalta Coating Systems, Dentsply Sirona, etc., because there's 10 companies here. He's got, if you look at his resume on LinkedIn, it's incredible, the organizations where he's led. We're going to jump into that today. But let me tell you just a little bit more about Solenis. In case you're not familiar, they're the leading global producer of specialty chemicals focused on delivering sustainable solutions for water-intensive industries. And these technologies are used by customers to improve operational efficiencies, enhance product quality, protect plant assets, minimize environmental impact, and maintain healthy water, all critical things. And by the way, they have 49 manufacturing facilities strategically located around the globe. Dan Key, welcome to Lead the Team.
Hey, Ben, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. Thanks so much for the invitation.
All right. And by the way, I forgot to mention your 3 successful daughters. So before we jump into this, let's talk a little bit about work-life balance and family and whatnot, because it comes up time and time again. High flyers like yourself. Today I'm in Charleston, you're traveling, you're out in San Francisco, and you were leading some training out there for rising leaders. I mean, you've got a lot of different stuff going on here. How do you, what's your leadership mindset around work-life balance?
Well, Ben, I have a leadership, thoughts on leadership one pager that I give to all my teams, and all my direct reports, that outlines who I am and what I am. And one of them, actually number 2, specifically says, you have to take family first. You have to be there for your family. You have to take care of your health. That has to come first. Now, how does that manifest itself in running global operations, global companies, things like that? You're on flights that you wouldn't normally like to be on. You're on that red-eye flight that gets you back in time so you can be there for your daughter's play or your daughter's sporting event. You're flying out on Sunday night to Europe, which a lot of people do anyway, but you're coming back on Thursday night so you can be there for Friday. It's managing. Yes. It's managing your schedule so that you're there. Now, I will say today is a lot easier than it was when my kids were growing up. My daughters are 31 and twins that are 29, because you have Teams and Skype and Zoom, and it's a lot easier to communicate with your family today than it was back then. But look, 2 of my daughters played soccer for quite a few years. I missed a few games that were in the middle of the week when they were in high school. That was a little harder, but I made all the rest of their games and helped coach them during this time. And, you just got to, it's hard, but you have to make the priority. You got to schedule time, just like you and I schedule time for work, right? We put it on the calendar, we block that time, and it's really critical you block that time when it's for your family. So I'm always there for
the example. Starts at the top. And it's so frustrating when you're working in an organization and your leader's telling you to do X, Y, Z, but they're not doing X, Y, Z, especially when it comes to work-life balance. And it's like, well, they're telling me I should prioritize my personal life and do the red eye and get back and all that. But I see my leader staying there for weeks on time. And it makes such a big difference when the leader is modeling that for the rest of the company. But it sounds like you're even going beyond that, because you have this one pager. What do you call the one pager that you give to your team?
It's called Thoughts on Leadership, and I'm very transparent with it. And it's got things that I've learned over the course of my career. I have to give credit to my dad; he started it. I've expanded it significantly over 35 years being out of school. But I actually gave it to the leadership class I was just at this week. So I'm willing to share with anybody. It's nothing special. It's just, it defines me. So there's no questions, right? So when I change jobs, one of the first things I do is I give that to my direct reports, and I tell them to share it with their direct reports. And there's nothing there's nothing in there that is, secret. If somebody were to ask me, I'd give them that answer. And but like I said, the first one's controversial, Ben. The first one says leaders are born, not made. So we can discuss that later. But
All right.
the second one,
the second one. Oh, this is getting good. All right. So I want to get into leaders are born, not made, which is the flip flop of what everybody says. All right. But leaders listening today, Dan, I mean, don't let this idea just for like out of your mind now. Make a note. What is your leadership doctrine for yourself, even if it's only a paragraph or 2 or 3 bullets, and share it, because it's going to help spread your message more positively with your team. It's going to help you remember what you're doing when you're leading. And the best part, and I bet you probably had a team. Have you ever had a team member remind you, Dan,
absolutely,
what you're doing doesn't seem congruent with that thing you sent out, and kind of remind you about it?
100%, Ben. 100%. I have many times had people call me out on it and remind me, hey, this is not per your credo, right? And
yes,
and so that's important though. That's as a senior leader or any leader, right? When you have a new boss, or like myself, when I change and I go to a new company, understanding the do's and don'ts, the boundaries, where can I push, where can I push. Most of the time we have to guess, right? Or we have to feel our way out. And that doesn't help conversations, right? Because
yes,
I might be able to push much further with my boss than I think. But on a specific situation, if I don't, because I'm unaware that I can push further, I think that just makes the conversation not as meaningful. So by doing that, now I've said, hey, look, if you want to have a great conversation with me, here are the things you should be prepped for, right? So,
or interview with you for a promotion, right? If you're one of these 49 facilities out there and you got an interview with Dan coming up, you need to make sure you read this document a couple of times. And some leaders might hesitate and say, well, that doesn't sound very good to get caught up on my own team, up my own document, on my own leadership style. And I would say that's the best case scenario, because that means they're reading it, they're digesting it, and you're creating the leadership culture that you want to create from this. That means you're being effective with your communication. And man, congrats. Now you said your dad started this. Sorry, go ahead.
Another yeah. So I'm sorry. Yeah. One more thing, Ben. Sorry. By being transparent like that, if I'm so transparent about myself personally that way, I'm going to be transparent about everything else. So when I come across a tough subject and I have to be transparent about it or deliver a message, the team already knows that they're getting the full story. I'm not trying to be, I'm being my authentic self. So I'm not trying to hide something from them. And so what helps is when they need to ask questions or they need advice or whatever, they know they can ask, because I don't have any secrets. So,
man, so I'm also pointing out here for leaders, Dan's talking about, probably you have many tools at your disposal, but you're talking about one tool that you're using that's generating so many things, generating trust, through transparency, it's generating connection, it's helping establish the culture, it's helping hold you accountable to your own leadership aspirations and ideals. So it's a really powerful thing for people to be thinking about. Now, you said your dad had started this. What was your dad about in this whole thing, and how did you get it in your hands?
So my dad, he had grown up through manufacturing, and he'd been in the auto industry and several other companies. But at a point over his career, he started jotting down these notes that he actually termed the phrase "thoughts on leadership." Some of which, like I said, I've modified into today's world. It's a little different today than it was when he first started thinking about it. But I remember today, and still have it hanging in my office. He gave me a plaque at my 18th birthday that he had inscribed all of his thoughts on leadership. And I still have that, and I hang it in my office so people can see it. But what I've done, like I said, is I've tweaked it, I've modified it over the course of 30 plus years to almost 40 years now, to improve on it and add a few things and clarify a few things. But the premise of the items he put originally on there are still listed on my thoughts on leadership. So because
Wow.
I felt like they were just really, great advice. So
What a cool story. What a cool story.
yeah.
And to have that generational, I mean, is like, some of the best leadership ideas aren't the newest trendy things. They were the things that have stood the test of time. And do we really think that the things that have been working over hundreds of years, that leadership or success, there's an expression that success leaves clues. And it's so
Mm-hmm.
nice to have that distilled in a way that you can build on.
Correct.
So yeah. So cool. I got to ask you, when you were at Honeywell, I remember how to do the trifold. Did you have the trifold
Oh
document,
yes.
the one pager?
Yeah. The
Okay,
standard work. Yeah. Yeah. Your
standard
standard
work.
work. Yeah. Yep.
So I had Josh Ensign, he was at Honeywell when I was there also, and he went and became the head of ops over at Tesla, and he took the idea of the trifold, which is like a standard
Yeah.
operating procedure where you're basically, it's like a super duper supercharged to-do list, and he's taken it to different companies since then. So anyway, that's another
It's
kind of document, a little bit more operational than leadership, but
Well, it's a great leadership tool as well, because the one critical thing about the trifold, the standard operating work, what am I going to do today? What do I need to do this week? That was what the trifold was. So
mm,
one portion of the paper was, hey, here are the 5 things I have to do today. I have to make sure, and typically those 5 things are the same things every day. And then the middle section was, what do I have to do this week? Again, those are things that that you have to do each week, and then you add to it, right? During the week, things change, and you add to it. And
mm,
then the third was monthly, and then of course on the other side there was other things for leadership work. But no, that standard work is very, very important to leaders, because look, we get engrossed every day with firefighting, and sometimes we forget that those first 5 things that we're supposed to do every day: walk the floor. If you're a plant manager, right? Walk the floor, say hello to everybody, right? I mean, sometimes you forget those things because you're already getting phone calls
yeah.
from a customer or whatever, right? So it's a great reminder, which by the way is part of leadership, is that you dedicate that time to go out and you do the things that you're supposed to do. It sounds repetitive, but it's the repetitive part of our jobs that helps people feel secure every day, right?
Mm,
And that's leadership, right?
so
That's
good.
leadership is, hey, Dan's walking around, he's
Mm,
saying hello to everybody. Things, behind the scenes, maybe crisis everywhere, but people become calm. The one time you miss, where's Dan, right? So
yeah.
standard work is a fantastic
Mm.
tool.
And it has a cumulative effect. You may not see the difference on one day, but it's the 100th time you do it, you're like, wow, this is making a big impact, and you see it emerge. So
Exactly.
anyway, so thematically for leaders, and really, even if you're not leading a team yet, but you're leading a project, having a way to distill what you're thinking and communicate it effectively, and also remind yourself operationally, all great things for us to be thinking about from this interview. So, but let's jump into a few other things here, Dan. So your expression, leaders are born, not made. So let's dive in.
Sure, sure. I think there's like 6 traits to a leader. And if you kind of go through some of those traits, some of them can be enhanced, some of them can be honed, a couple of them can be taught.
Hmm.
So for one, great leaders are great communicators. I don't know that that's necessarily wired into your DNA. That I think you can be taught. People learn faster than others. I'm a big fan of people going out and learning as leaders, learning how to
Hmm.
do public speaking, because if you can go out and do public speaking, you can hold a town hall, right? Or vice versa. So I'm a big fan of that. So I think in certain cases and I think there's 6 traits, but communication is one of them, and I think that's one that can be fixed, honed, improved upon, and in some cases probably learned. But one of the most inherent ones is that I think is wired in is you can't be a leader if you don't have followers. If people aren't willing to follow you, not because you told them to, but because they're
Hmm.
willing to go that extra mile for you. That's inherent in my opinion in your DNA, and that's what you're born with. There are numerous examples that we don't need to get into that are good, both good and bad, where people blindly followed other people.
Ah, okay.
And
Yep. It goes both
and
ways.
and yeah, and it wasn't because the person, it was just the way they were wired, the way they did things, the way they communicated. And I don't know that you can teach that innate characteristic to where people will be willing to follow you no matter what. Um, you can
Okay.
take the military out of it because you're giving orders and things like that, but for someone, so for instance, pick a sports team, right? uh, to get someone to be the leader of a sports team does not necessarily mean you coach them, does not necessarily mean it's the most athletic person. It's somebody that when you're in the huddle and you can look people in the eye and you can say, hey, look, we have to do this together.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's intestinal fortitude. That's innate in your wiring, your DNA. I mean, I was not the most athletic. I was certainly not the best on the team, but I could get the team to rally around,
Mm-hmm.
a flag, if you want to call it a flag or a lighthouse. I use the term lighthouse. Rally around a vision and really go after what we were trying to, achieve. Um, so I think that's why I say born, not made. Is I don't know that you could teach that. Can you improve upon that if you have it? Can you make it better? Sure. But I don't know that you can teach somebody to step up in, times of crisis, for instance, and actually lead. I think that's just something inherent.
And so with that philosophy in tow, it probably really shapes your hiring process for your teams and what you're looking for, because you're not necessarily looking at this person and say, hey, can I make them a leader? You're saying, where's the evidence? Where are the markers of the leader in their past? And then hiring for that.
Yeah, so I think as you go through your career, you kind of go through individual contributor, supervisor, manager. Those are things I think that can be taught, right? How to be a supervisor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you have a Honeywell operating system, standard work, things like that.
It
There
helps.
are great tools. It helps, right? Yeah. So you could teach somebody to do that. I think you could teach somebody to manage money and, priorities and things like that. But to get them to be a leader, so I'm very purposely distinguishing leaders versus
Mm-hmm.
managing and supervising, because I think a lot of people get them confused. I do look for leaders. I look for people that can rally their teams around a single lighthouse or
That's the
flag, whichever
lighthouse.
one you got. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So that's the word that you've really honed in on for your
Yes.
leadership. When you're communicating the lighthouse idea to your team, how does it go?
So the lighthouse is, hey, it's out in front of us, and we're in a sailboat, and we can see it. We can only see parts of it. We're not exactly sure how we're going to get there, but we're in a sailboat,
Hmm.
and some days the wind's with us, and so things are going great, and we're sailing, and we're doing 15 knots, and everything's good, right? Some days the wind's against us, so now we gotta go tack. We got to go left. We gotta go to the right. We gotta go left. We gotta go right. But we're still making progress toward the lighthouse. Then there's some days there's no wind.
Yeah.
When there's no wind, we got to get the paddles out, and we got to work together as a team to paddle the boat toward the lighthouse. But all along, you can see the lighthouse, and every day, every week, every year, we're getting closer and closer to that lighthouse. And
Mm-hmm.
and so that's the vision that I try to help our teams with, especially as you said, I move companies quite frequently to help companies get better. And so, like at my current company, Solenis, I've been here just a little over a year, but our lighthouse was set about 8 months ago. This is where we need to be in 3 years. And so now, when we make decisions every day, we know what we need to do. And
Mm-hmm.
again, is the wind with us? Is it against us? Is there no wind? And so every day, depending on what the wind is doing, we have to do something different with the boat.
I believe that is a really cool metaphor for leaders listening today to be thinking about, because when you talk about the vision, that's important that leaders think about it, they create it, and they communicate it. But a lot of times they need a metaphor to help really explain what this is about. And I love that because, like you said, a lighthouse, there's a light, but you can't always see the outline of it. It may be a little hazy. It may be early on, So I think explaining it, hey, it's more like a lighthouse, sort of a beacon, but it's not always clear. Okay. And things change and understand how the external environment impacts progress. And for teams to acknowledge that and kind of understand where you and your team are. Is this a paddle day or is this a wind at our back day? And if it's a wind at our back day, you might change your leadership approach. You might say, hey, let's get out of work early today and go have a little happy hour. Or versus today, it's like, hey, y'all, in 2 weeks, I could really use some help on a Saturday morning. We don't like to work on the weekends all the time, but maybe this is the time we got to do that. And so really got to communicate that. Now you mentioned 10 companies. So did you just, I'm curious, do you think about this as, hey, there's an opportunity, I'm needed, that's where I go? Or do you sort of see yourself as there's this certain sweet spot in my career where my leadership and my joy as a leader really comes into play, and I'm looking for people or looking for organizations in that specific part of the journey? Or how are you thinking about it?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Every time I've joined a company, I've always thought that I'll just stay there, to the end, right? That's kind of the old school of me, right? But things don't work out that way. Things change for different reasons. One example is Sigma-Aldrich, great company. It was a brand new role as chief supply chain officer, but we got acquired, and so I became a synergy. So, so
I
it was.
became a synergy.
Yeah, yeah, I became a
I
synergy,
love
which
it.
is great. Yeah.
Yeah.
At Hexion, I was there for 7 years and helped start Hexion Specialty Chemicals, private equity owned company. But I was responsible for the operations supply chain for 3 business units. We sold 2 of them. So partly because we were successful in fixing them and making them more profitable, partly because it was the right timing to sell them. So I kind of worked myself out of a
Okay.
job. So different things cause the change. But when I make a change, then the most important thing is looking for that opportunity where my skill set, my background, and the things I like to do, which I obviously I think I know what that is, match with the role. So,
Mm-hmm.
recruiters call me all the time, and they bring different roles, and some of them are really really great roles. And could I see myself doing it? Certainly, but would it be challenging enough? For what I like to do, which is helping companies get more successful in between sales and SG&A,
Mm-hmm.
it probably it isn't right. I've said no to recruiters on some really big jobs with some really great companies, just because it was more maintain, not go in and transform.
So
But again, okay, great.
so what I'm hearing is like, Ben, I didn't necessarily go in with this is the role that I'm going to play in companies, but I discovered it along the way that I'm really good at this part of it and in this area. And
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I've learned that I enjoy fixing things and
Mm-hmm.
improving on things and transforming things. So I've learned that I love it. And I tell people when I mentor them that one of the things from a career standpoint is I always said yes. If somebody came to me and said, "Hey, I need you, I need someone to go over here and fix this," I always
Mm-hmm.
said yes, even if I didn't know what I was fixing. And I had to go over there and I had to dig into it and figure out what was wrong and how to fix it. And it kind of started very early in my career. Actually, when I became a shift supervisor at DuPont. But so I'm looking for things that I can have the biggest impact. But the roles typically are, at least the last 4, were brand new to the company, and the company recognized they needed some synergy, they needed some centralization, and there's tools that I could bring to the table to help transform the companies and help them become better, more profitable. So
You talk about being a participative leader. What exactly does that mean?
yeah, so look, I don't have all the right answers. If my hit ratio wouldn't even get me, a multi-million-dollar contract with a poor baseball team. So look, participative is getting all ideas out on the table. I
Mm,
think that's extremely important. What are all the different ideas that everybody has, and then how do we go through and see really what are the pros and cons. I mean, I'm a big believer in sitting down with every single idea and saying, here are the benefits, here are the risks if we go down there, and take that decision. And then at the end of the day, it becomes a group decision because everybody had a chance to weigh in and find the best solution. So I think we were kind of kidding early on as I'm not a big fan of accolades. I don't want to take the credit. I take the blame, but I don't want to take the credit. So I don't care whose idea it is. What I care about is, do we make things better for whoever has to do that operation or whichever company we're working for? As long as we're making it better, who cares where the idea came from? So that's one of many ways of participation. Being participative is getting everybody's ideas and saying, hey, let's pick the right one, because I'm not my hit ratio is very low. So.
What are 3 success strategies that you'd recommend for every employee?
So depending on where you are in the organization, first off is, I think, number one, you have to take ownership for your own career. And, some people are fine with, coming in and basically doing, roughly the same job. I won't say exactly the same job because that's not fair, but because it changes every day. But look, you have to take ownership for your own career, whether, you're going into a managerial role, you want to be the leader of something, you got to take ownership. The second is like I said, is the yes mentality. I can't tell you how many people I've mentored or I've seen in my career who have been scared, right, to take that next step. If I hadn't done some of the things I'd done in my career and said yes to those things when I was asked, I certainly wouldn't be here talking with you, Ben, and talking about leadership styles and how to lead teams and stuff. I would not have been as successful as I think I've been. And then the third is really around courage. There are so many things that don't go well during the day, at work or even at home, and having the courage to step up and say, here's what's wrong. Now, you may not have the answer, it's okay, but hey, look, we've got an issue here. Let's take plant floor. I've got a safety issue here. Every single employee on the floor knows about it. Well, if somebody doesn't have the courage to tell plant management, it's not going to get fixed.
Wow.
And I think having courage is really, really tough. Can you tell your boss? Now, to be fair, bosses don't make it easy sometimes, but can you tell your boss we got an issue, and hey, let's work together, being participative again to fix the problem. I think there's just a lot of people who are afraid to bring forward their ideas and their thoughts because could have been because of something happened in the past, could have been I don't know if the boss will take it, whatever reason. But I think the courage is a really important quality, and I look for that when I interview people. Are you courageous?
So good, and good reminder for everybody, and some really good things to put in your leadership one pager on what leadership is when you communicate that out. Dan, it's been such a great interview today and a lot of fun. What's your parting thought for our listeners?
My parting thought is look, I think you can have work-life balance, and I think you can be successful at work. Sometimes we just get bogged down in the day-to-day details, and we don't take one step back. And heard a great phrase this week, hit the pause button. Take time to hit the pause button and evaluate where you're at, evaluate what's going on, and make sure that you're doing the right thing. Most of the companies we work for were in the business of doing what they're doing long before we got there as employees. They'll be there long after we leave. And I can honestly say in all my changes, none of them have stopped being successful. They were somewhat successful before I got there. Hopefully I made them a little more successful. They continue to be successful. And, I had a small impact in a very long time frame. So just take pause that, things will be okay. Things will be better. And, play your role. So
wise counsel, leaders, hit the pause button after this episode. Take a few minutes, not during the episode, after this episode, and reflect on this really insightful interview with Mr. Dan Key. Thanks, Dan.
Ben, thank you very much. Appreciate it very much. Everybody have a great day.